most likely in another 25 or maybe 50 years, some youngster will come along and take the style and really do something with it, you know?
There is this great audio clip floating on the internet where somebody caught Charlie Parker practicing in a hotel room, presumably warming up or practicing a bit on a saxophone. This little clip gives a unique insight into what Bert was practicing at the time and what he considered to be important. It just might teach you some vital lessons for the rest of your life. And you might be surprised by some of them. There are basically 4 different parts in this clip, different concepts he displays, which you can divide in 2 main categories. But a few words on this bootleg recording first. It seems to be recorded early 1955, which is just a few months prior to his death. Parker was in a bad shape at this point and he was waiting for an interview in the apartment of Dick Meldonian, who was also the guy who recorded this. You can hear a third unknown party asking questions and Charlie Parker is explaining a bit to him, more so towards the end of the recording. He also might have been checking out somebody else's saxophone, but the exact context stays unclear. So let's dive into it. He starts with checking a few middle Cs on the saxophone before going into his trademark licks. I guess he was human after all, like we all do. He started with playing stuff he already knew very well. The first bars are in the key of F for E flat instruments. And next he plays a totally face-melting bebop line with so much personality. The first part of that phrase is something you actually might know from a particular solo. Check out that first part again. This time I've added some implied harmonies. It's pretty much a quick compilation of trademark Bert lines. What you can see also is that he starts his phrase 3 times with the first notes being out of the half-tone whole tone scale, which adds a nice color to this mainly A7 sound. Next you can hear him search for an exercise he obviously practiced and memorized before. It's one of the exercises straight out of the Closet book, which is fairly known by most saxophonists.
I heard a record of yours a couple of months ago that somehow I've missed up to date, and I heard about a 2-bar quote from the Closet book. It was like an echo from home.
Oh. Yeah. Well, it was all done with books, you know.
Charlie Parker was big on putting in the work, which he told Paul Desmond in an interview, which was uploaded by also a great saxophone player, Bob Reynolds.
I put quite a bit of study into the horn, that's true. In fact, the neighbors threatened to ask my mother to move once when I was living out west. I mean, they said I was driving them crazy with the horn. I used to put in at least from 11 to 15 hours a day.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
You can see that it's written displaced by a 8th note if you compare it to the original Closet, and Charlie Parker also plays it a minor 3rd down from the original version. This is written down how I perceive where Bert puts the downbeat, but it's obviously an 8th note earlier than Closet's version, so this caused quite some cognitive dissonance here. I've consulted a guitarist, a drummer, a psychologist, and in the end went with my gut feeling. Reason that I perceive it that way is because he accentuates every note of that A triad on the downbeat. After that, the 16ths he plays sound more to me like a pick up towards the next target note. But it actually doesn't matter really.
It doesn't matter!
What you can hear is that he was big on a good, straightforward technique. Technique meaning being precise and clean according to Bert himself.
I mean, ever since I've ever heard music, I thought it should be very clean, very precise, as clean as possible anyway, you know.
Note also how he played in the style required for classical saxophone. No jazz phrasing this time. This is a small piece of the audio clip, but you can hear him playing some sheets of sounds, a term which you mostly attribute to John Coltrane. But I think here it applies to Bert as well. You can hear him paint the sound of a A minor major 7 ascending, while when coming back down, he portrays more of a major 7 sharp 11 sound. Lydian, that's my man. It shows that Charlie Parker might have approved of this channel.
That's absolutely right.
Which I'll use as a cheap segue to inform you that you also can subscribe to this channel for all things concerning improvisation and soloing. And while you're definitely not at it, you might also hit that like button. This last part of the audio clip shows Charlie Parker playing through all major keys, but maybe slightly different than most people do. He's not doing it through the cycle of fifths, but going chromatically up. This might be not too surprising to you, but it's somehow unusual to hear him do it descending. Also notice how he makes all those scales sound incredible. Even those exercises that most people find boring, he makes it sound like music. So the key takeaway here, pun intended, is to... Wait, I feel some preaching coming here. If you don't know your major scales, what the hell are you practicing that is more important than that? I mean, most music is in a key, at least for some limited period of time. So practice all thy major scales. That's really the basics. If you're somehow serious about music, this should be in your practice routine always. And if you know them, it just takes a minute, just like Charlie Parker did here. And afterwards you can relate all those modi back to this major scale, because it's basically just starting at a different point in that major scale. But don't start practicing all those hip scales if you can barely play the most basic ones. Now, if you zoom out a bit, you can see all 4 different aspects he displayed here in 2 main categories, I think. Vision and technique. The first part was clearly Parker's vision. It's how Parker looked at the world, his trademark licks and lines. The second part, however, that close exercise, that's surely technique. Becoming as precise and clean as possible by studying the horn. And I love to make a little football analogy here. You can have a great vision, like for example Kevin De Bruyne, who sees potential passes on the pitch that nobody else sees. But he wouldn't get very far with that vision if he didn't have that amazing technique to execute on his ideas.
It's beautiful! It really is lovely to watch.
And yes, there are many different visions to what music should sound like. They all might require a slightly different set of skills, but the more you have of it, the more options you have. It totally should enhance your options in creativity, without necessarily using them all. The third one is a bit of both, I think, but leans slightly more towards the vision, as he's just testing some different sound colors. Finally, the fourth one is practicing technique again. It's about knowing your major scales and make them sound like music. So tell me, what do you like about this amazing clip of Bert practicing? Is there something you will apply into your playing? I definitely will. I'm totally energized by hearing this little segment. Let me know in the comment section below. The analysis and sheet music for this is available on our Patreon, where you simultaneously can support the channel and get these kinds of extras. I'm Jan Reinders from Sharp 11 Music, and see you next time.